What if the most dangerous people don't look dangerous at all? What if evil didn't scream, but whispered? In the summer of 1991, neighbors complained about a smell so foul it made them gag. Police were called, not once, but repeatedly. Each time, they left. They had no idea that behind one apartment door was a secret so horrifying, it would shock the entire world. This is not just the story of a killer. This is the psychology behind Jeffrey Dahmer. And it begins long before the murders. Jeffrey Dahmer didn't grow up in darkness. There were no chains in the basement, no bloodstains on the walls, no obvious warning signs screaming that a monster was being born. Instead, there was silence. And sometimes, silence is far more dangerous. Jeffrey Lionel Dahmer was born on May 21st, 1960, in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. From the outside, his childhood appeared ordinary. A middle-class home, 2 parents, a quiet neighborhood. But psychologically, something was wrong, and it started early. As a child, Jeffrey was described as withdrawn, distant, and emotionally flat. He didn't react the way other children did. Psychologists would later describe this as emotional detachment, an early sign often seen in individuals who struggle with empathy. Jeffrey didn't bond easily. He didn't form strong friendships, and he didn't express emotion the way others did. While other children laughed, Jeffrey observed. While others played, Jeffrey watched. But what he watched would disturb even trained professionals decades later. At around the age of 4, Jeffrey underwent a routine surgery. Afterward, his parents noticed a change. He became quieter, more distant, almost vacant. While no surgery can create a killer, psychologists believe traumatic experiences can trigger emotional withdrawal in children already predisposed to psychological disorders. Soon, Jeffrey developed an obsession, not with people, with death. He began collecting dead animals, roadkill, bones, anything he could dissect. To Jeffrey, this wasn't cruelty. It was curiosity. Psychologists call this desensitization, repeated exposure to death without emotional response. Instead of fear or disgust, Jeffrey felt control, and control would later become everything. Jeffrey didn't just collect animal remains. He studied them. He dissolved flesh in chemicals, bleached bones, examined anatomy. This wasn't random behavior. It was methodical, structured, intentional. Psychologists later identified this as fantasy rehearsal, where violent fantasies are practiced in non-human ways before escalating. But at this stage, no one was watching closely enough. No one intervened. No one asked why a child felt more comfortable with dead animals than with living people. Jeffrey's home life was unraveling. His parents argued constantly. His mother struggled with mental health issues. His father worked long hours. Emotionally, Jeffrey was alone. Psychologists emphasize that emotional neglect, even unintentional, can intensify feelings of isolation in vulnerable children. Jeffrey didn't feel seen. He didn't feel understood. And most dangerously, he didn't feel connected. By his teenage years, Jeffrey discovered alcohol. It didn't just numb him. It completed him. Alcohol gave Jeffrey what he lacked naturally: confidence, disinhibition, emotional release. By age 14, he was drinking heavily, even before school. Psychologists note that early substance abuse often lowers moral boundaries and suppresses internal restraints. In Jeffrey's case, alcohol became the switch, the thing that turned fantasies into impulses. As Jeffrey grew older, his fantasies evolved. They were no longer about animals. They were about people, control, submission, stillness. He fantasized about having complete dominance over another human being. Not anger, not rage, but ownership. Psychologists describe this as paraphilic fixation, where sexual arousal becomes tied to control, immobility, and death. And crucially, Jeffrey didn't want his victims to fight. He wanted them to stay, forever. In 1978, just weeks after graduating high school, Jeffrey Dahmer crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. His parents had recently divorced. The house was nearly empty. Jeffrey was alone. He met a young hitchhiker named Stephen Hicks. They talked. They drank. And then something shifted. When Stephen tried to leave, Jeffrey panicked. What happened next would mark the beginning of one of the most disturbing killing sprees in modern history. Jeffrey struck him. And when Stephen stopped moving, Jeffrey didn't feel horror. He felt relief. This moment is critical. Psychologists call this the first kill threshold. Once crossed, The brain rewires its moral framework. Fear disappears. Guilt dulls. Fantasy becomes reality. Jeffrey had discovered something terrifying. Killing gave him peace. Jeffrey disposed of the body. He cleaned the evidence. And then, he went back to normal life. No arrest. No suspicion. No consequences. But inside Jeffrey Dahmer's mind, something irreversible had awakened. For most people, that would be enough to stop forever. For Jeffrey Dahmer, it was proof. Proof that the world wouldn't stop him. Psychologists agree on one thing. The most dangerous period in a serial killer's life is after the first successful murder. Why? Because fear disappears. Jeffrey Dahmer didn't see himself as evil. He didn't see himself as violent. In his mind, he had simply solved a problem: loneliness. For nearly a decade after his first murder, Jeffrey didn't kill again. But this wasn't recovery. It was incubation. He joined the military. He drank heavily. He failed repeatedly. And everywhere he went, one thing followed him: his fantasies. Psychologists call this fantasy reinforcement, when violent thoughts don't fade, but grow stronger with time. Jeffrey imagined control, stillness, obedience. He wasn't dreaming of death. He was dreaming of possession. By the late 1980s, Jeffrey was back in Milwaukee, unemployed, isolated, deeply addicted to alcohol. And now, he had something else: access, bars, clubs, young men looking for company. Jeffrey learned how to blend in, smile, offer a drink, promise companionship. Psychologically, this is known as predatory masking, appearing harmless to disarm suspicion. And it worked. In 1987, Jeffrey killed again. This time, it felt different, more controlled, more intentional. And afterward, he kept parts of the body. This was a turning point. Psychologists identify this as trophy behavior, keeping reminders to relive the crime mentally. Jeffrey wasn't just killing anymore. He was collecting. After the second murder, the pace increased. Jeffrey began killing regularly. Each crime followed a pattern: lure the victim, drug them, remove resistance, eliminate the threat of abandonment. The key word here is abandonment. Psychologists later concluded that Jeffrey's greatest fear wasn't being caught. It was being left. Death was his solution. Jeffrey moved into an apartment building. Thin walls, close neighbors, constant smells. This should have been impossible, but it wasn't. Because Jeffrey understood something critical. People don't want to know. When neighbors complained about odors, he blamed spoiled meat. When they heard noises, he blamed accidents. And the authorities believed him. Psychologists call this authority bias. People trust calm explanations, even when evidence suggests otherwise. Jeffrey learned he could talk his way out of anything. Jeffrey's fantasies evolved again. He didn't just want victims who were still. He wanted them alive, but compliant. What followed was one of the most disturbing aspects of his crimes. He began experimenting, attempting to control the human mind. Psychologists later described this as delusional omnipotence, the belief that one can override human autonomy. Jeffrey believed he could create permanent submission. He was wrong, but no one stopped him. In 1991, one victim escaped, barely conscious, confused, bleeding. He stumbled into the street. Neighbors called the police. This was it. This was the moment everything should have ended. Police arrived. Jeffrey Dahmer followed. Calm, soft-spoken, polite. He told them the victim was his boyfriend, that it was a misunderstanding, and the police believed him. They escorted the victim back to Jeffrey's apartment. Psychologists refer to this as catastrophic system failure, when social trust overrides critical judgment. Inside that apartment, the truth was waiting, but the door closed. After that night, something changed. Jeffrey felt untouchable. He had faced police and won. Psychologists call this invincibility reinforcement, when success against authority strengthens dangerous behavior. Jeffrey didn't slow down. He accelerated. The kills became faster, more frequent, more reckless. The smell grew worse. The neighbors complained louder. And still, nothing happened. Serial killers are rarely caught because they stop. They are caught because they make mistakes. Jeffrey was drinking more than ever, sloppier, less careful. And on a hot summer night in 1991, he made one mistake too many. A man escaped his apartment. This time, he reached the police station. And this time, Jeffrey Dahmer wouldn't be able to explain his way out. Police were about to enter Jeffrey Dahmer's apartment. They didn't know what they would find. They couldn't imagine it. But once the door opened, nothing would ever be the same again. Watch out for Part 2. Part 2 reveals what police discovered and the psychological truth that shocked the world. If you want to understand the psychology behind real crimes, not just what happened, but why, subscribe to Psychology of True Crime.